All right, so let's talk about location and war zones. I suggest you stay out of the war zones. There are opportunities there. There are junker houses that are sitting vacant that you can flip. Your only real buyer in a war zone is a landlord. One who's in the Section 8 world and who's, just doing that kind of landlording. Otherwise, there's really nowhere to go. The rehabber is going to know darn well they're not going to be able to get it sold and cashed out to a qualified end user buyer because qualified end user buyers don't buy in the war zone. They go somewhere else. The only real buyers in war zones are landlords. And there are opportunities there, but it's just not what I suggest you focus on. You might as well be in a more pleasant, safer area. And what you'll find is those rehabber buyers are way more abundant in the neighborhoods where houses are selling to qualified buyers. So how are we going to identify the war zones? It's not all that hard. But here's the thing, though. This is important. You might actually think a neighborhood where you really could make a lot of money is a war zone, but it isn't. The way that we've established that the youngest person in the room is 21 years old, so we can certainly go to an R rating. The way that I suggest you identify a war zone, and I always have, is if they're hooking and dealing in broad daylight, it's a war zone. If they're doing it in broad daylight, it's a war zone. The lunatics are running the asylum. The police have basically given up. Now, if you go to a neighborhood and you see those types of services and products being offered at night, assuming that you're in a war zone might not be a good idea. Because what I have learned, and I spent 8 years in South Florida, and I learned this there. During the day, they do their business in the war zone, but at night, they'll go to the nicer neighborhoods because they can actually get more for their products and services there and can hide under cover of darkness, where the police would drive them out of there during the day. The people just wouldn't stand for it. And so be careful that you don't label an area in your mind a war zone that isn't. Here's another thing. This is a great lesson I learned on this. When I first got into business years and years ago, I had a great friend and mentor who was just a giant asset to me. And I said to him one time, I said, I've decided I'm not going to do business on a house that I wouldn't live in. And he said, whoa, hold on there a minute now. You might have just eliminated a big portion of the market and as a result, a lot of income. He said, what I think you might want to do is think this way. I don't want to do business on houses that I would not have ever lived in at some point in my life. And when I was in college, I went to RIT, to Rochester Institute of Technology. I lived in an apartment with two buddies in a war zone. I didn't know that when I moved in, but figured it out pretty quick. 3 stereos in my car later. Yeah. I'm a little uptake sometimes, but anyway, be careful with that thinking. The best type of eventual end user is going to be that first-time home buyer, so let's be in the neighborhoods that appeal to first-time home buyers. That's where the inventory is, that's where the liquidity is, and that's where the buyers who make emotional buying decisions are. So when it comes to junkers, houses that need repair, the best place for you to focus with the least amount of risk, the greatest inventory, the greatest liquidity, and buyers who make emotional buying decisions is in the entry-level end of the market. Are there junker luxury homes? I hear about them all the time. I had a student came to me and said, oh my gosh, I found this house in North Florida in 2003 it appraised for $8.7 million. And I'm thinking, okay, so, all right. It's a junker now, it could be bought for $1.5 million. And I'm thinking, well, okay, that's interesting and all. And, someone might make money on that. However, the only way anybody's going to make any money on that is to tie up $1.5 million plus the cost to do the repairs, and then wait for a buyer that's about 1 in a million, if not more, who wants a house like that. Is there money to be made that way? Yeah. Is there greater risk? Way greater risk. So let's mitigate the risk. By the way, that emotional buying decision that your buyer makes, or that your buyer's buyer makes, if we're wholesaling this house to a rehabber, their buyer is the end user, that emotional buying decision is huge. There are still special financing programs out there for first-time home buyers that are a powerful incentive. Or no down payment, FICO scores in the high 5s, low 6s at the most, and easy qualifying. I mean, so it's still, without a doubt, first-time home buyers still have the advantage in the marketplace. They always do, they always have. And there are special grant programs in most areas. If you talk to a mortgage broker and ask them about local grant programs for first-time home buyers, there will almost for sure be something or several things that they can qualify for. There's a $3,000 closing cost grant in my area right now. It's been there for years. Condition. This is a big part of the pre-screening process. And what I find is a lot of times guys will say, well, I made an offer on this house and they turned me down and I got outbid. That's a biggie. I got outbid. Okay, well then one of the first questions I'm going to come back to you and ask is, what kind of condition was the house in? And if your answer is, well, it was really in move-in condition, I'm going to say, well, there's your problem. You're trying to buy an apple and you're making an offer on an orange. It doesn't work. The house has got to be a junker. If you want to run the numbers, and we're going to go through the numbers, if you want to run the numbers, net it down to the most you can pay, you want to buy at that price, that house better need a lot of repairs, or you're going to compete with owner-occupants who will always be willing to pay more than you. If all it needs is carpet and paint, there's an owner-occupant out there that will happily buy that house, and a lender that will happily lend because they can get a little discount on it and do the work themselves. They'll pay way more than we ever can. That's like taking up the game of boxing and stepping into the ring with Mike Tyson. You're going to get creamed. It's not going to work. The house needs to be saleable. So let's think with the end in mind, as Stephen Covey says in his book, The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. Always think with the end in mind. Okay, the question is this a saleable property? Will it be easy to sell? Or is there something strange about it that will make it hard to sell? And you guys we're all grown-ups. You can recognize a house. You can probably look at a house from the street and go, this one's going to be tough to sell. You know, if there's a cobbed-on addition with another cobbed-on addition on the original cobbed-on addition, or if there's, you got to walk through a bedroom to get to a bedroom, or anything, frankly, that an appraiser would call functional obsolescence. We got to watch out for that, because even a rehab on a house with a cobbed-on addition on the cobbed-on addition, you're really just going to be fixing crap cobbed-on additions. So you want to look for things that you know are really part of the house that a rehab probably wouldn't change without it becoming, a really big project, that are going to make it difficult to sell. And the opportunity, I put that in there because when I'm looking at a house, I want to get a sense of, I get this sort of warm and fuzzy feeling in the gut that just, I feel opportunity. I can sense it. I know it's there. I know it's there for the taking. And then, before we make our offer, we're going to come up with the exit strategy. Remember, exit strategy first. Well, what are the exit strategies? And we're going to talk about this. In fact, I have a diagram or a matrix in your book that we'll get to. But look, if it's a junker house, we're either going to wholesale it or we're going to retail it. Now, you might argue, well, I'm going to sell this one on a lease option. Okay, fine. Then you need to get long-term financing. Probably going to come from a private lender. So if your exit strategy is to sell it on a lease option, your funding requirements have just changed, and now you need to have that in mind. If you're going to wholesale the thing, leave it as is, not even touch it, the only funding you're going to need is the kind of funding that we offer that's readily available to you. So it matters a lot. Your exit strategy is to retail it, buy it, fix it, sell it. How many of you have ever done that, by the way? Done a rehab? Okay? A lot of you. If that's your exit strategy, you guys that have done this, Do you need to know where the money for purchase and the rehab expenses is going to come from before you make your offer? Yep. Yeah, you do. So that pesky exit strategy is affecting me before I make my offer. We got to think about it. What I don't want to see you do is make an offer, working, say, with a realtor, you get it accepted, and then you don't close. That's not a good thing. I mean, look, it happens, and it's not going to kill you. But if you can avoid it, it's better. Because no matter how you slice it, if you don't close, your credibility has just been tarnished, at least. With that, perhaps with that seller, if it's a bank, you may come up with them, you may come up against them again in the future. So it's important to think about your exit strategy first.